Okay, we are ready.
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Yep. So welcome, everybody. It's the December 7th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. Planning staff, would you take a roll call?
Yes, Chair Thompson, Member Thompson is excused. Member Walsh,
Here.
Member Paline,
Here.
Member McCoy,
Here.
Member Lockyer,
Here.
and Member Dozy.
Here.
5 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Member Lockyer, the agenda was published on Wednesday, December 1st at 6 p.m. And so our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? Proposed revisions? Alrighty. And I make a motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
Ayes?
Aye.
John, you too?
Yes. Yeah.
So public comments. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any of the issues within the committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time the item is presented. If you would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Is there anyone here present who would like to comment on an item that is not on today's agenda? If so, please unmute your microphone, give us your name, and proceed. I don't see anybody wishing to speak on items not on tonight's agenda, so we'll proceed to the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone have any revisions to the minutes that were posted on tonight's agenda? That's from November 15th. Hayline, Walsh, and Chair Jakeway were excused that night. So anybody like to make a motion to accept that?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
So just so we're all on the same page, the motion would be to accept the consent calendar items, which includes the minutes from November 15th, 2021, as well as a proposed major architectural application for a single family residence at 803 West Stevens Road, case 3.4290 MAJ. So those are the 2 items on the consent calendar.
Okay.
You still good with that, Tom?
I would like to amend it that we review item number 2.
So you'd like to pull that back down from the consent calendar?
Yes.
Yep.
So then the motion would be just for the meeting minutes, and we'll discuss.
Just for the minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Boy. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That's good. So we'll move on to unfinished business, or would we take that item up? I feel like unfinished business would be first to it.
No, we can take up the item number 2 first
Okay.
before we get into unfinished business.
Great. Item number 2, would the planner give us a staff report? Please.
Yes. One second, sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. There we go. Can you see the screen now?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So the applicant is proposing a 5,170 square foot single family residence with a I believe 2,000 or 200 square foot pavilion on the western side. The lot is relatively flat, and it is surrounded by development on all sides. The proposed single family home will be consistent with the neighborhood in terms of design, size, colors, and materials. So they provided plenty of elevations and renderings for us to look at. You can see that it's a proposed modern style. It's got a flat roof with all mechanical equipment located behind proposed perimeter walls. They are using stucco for a majority of the home with accent, like brick accents as well. The garage, it's probably a little difficult to see from this angle, but further on in the rendering, you'll see, sorry, that the garage is actually facing the western direction. So you can see it from the main street because the main street curves, but it's not its primary focus. This is the north elevation, so this would be the front of the property. And I'm just gonna backtrack because I probably put this in the wrong order, but they are proposing a pavilion as well. The pavilion is detached from the main structure and it's primarily used for outdoor, for the pool. Here's an overview of what the proposed residence will look like. There will be a pool. There's existing landscaping on the property, but they are intending to add more, especially towards the rear of the lot. A little grass around the pool and the spa area, but it is consistent with the landscape ordinance of our zoning code. And you can see that the house is relative in size compared to the homes around it as well. These are the materials that they'll be using for the house. It is, they're very neutral and they complement the surrounding area. And then here is an up close view of their proposed landscape plan. It is primarily desert in the front, desert everywhere actually. And that concludes my report, my presentation.
Mhm. Thank you. Alex, does anyone have, any committee members have any questions for the staff? Is the applicant present to present their project?
Yes, I am. Mark Daniels here, architect of the project. Bennett Peterbaugh, the landscape architect, is here as well
Yep.
to answer any questions.
Just want to let you know, we have about 10 minutes here to present the project, and then I think a little bit later, you'll get about 2 minutes of rebuttal after public comment. So try to keep it. Yep.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Member Lockyer. So our goal with this project is to create a unique piece of architecture which is respectful of both the existing neighborhood, which will be fully built out with this structure, as well as the existing zoning code for the city. We've done our due diligence by meeting with a majority of the neighbors in place, and we've reviewed this project with them and answered many of their questions prior to this meeting. And many of their approval letters are attached in this report prepared by Alex. The siding of the project places both the garage and an attached casita toward the street side, which you can see on the right side of this drawing. The social spaces are pushed toward the center of the lot to capture views, as well as allow for expansive gardens both to the front and rear yards. By doing this, we push a majority of the social spaces away from the neighbors and allow the project to breathe a bit more, surrounded by native vegetation and landscaping. Flared walls to the southwest and northeast open the structure to these outdoor garden spaces. The shadow garden to the north, which is the street side, is hidden by a series of terraced landscape walls as well as grading, and also buffered by garden walls and landscaping, which Bennett can speak about going forward. Our goal with the material palette is to create a very neutral, understated palette, which allows both the mountains beyond, which you see from both the front and the rear of this lot, as well as the landscaping to add the pops of color and texture. We do have a number of natural elements. The colonnade you see on the right side of this image, it leads toward the front door. Those are clad in a natural limestone. The underside of the flared roof, which you see in the very center of the image, is an exposed TNG, which will be hemlock fir with a clear stain. Then we use a brake metal in a dark gray tone to really contrast the stucco and the edges of the roof. Bennett, would you like to speak into the landscape plan?
Yeah, as far as the front entry, we're a bit lower than the street as the elevation and the finished floor of the house. So we have a series of a couple steps from the curb down to the front entry of the walk, and then you go through the colonnade up to the front door. And to make it less conspicuous, we have a series of natural looking boulders that'll help retain the plant material between those boulders. And there's 2 existing olives on the property that we're going to be using back in the garden and moving them to the locations you see. We have an architectural low planter wall that is like the first indication, and the boulders will run into this wall. And then that wall is helping retain a higher elevation of planting so that that wall in the shadow garden where you see the palm coming through the center of it is not a very high wall. It's going to be very low profile. It just a lot of gravel and inert materials that will make this look more natural and clean. The driveway, as you can see on the north, the northeast side of the property, it's what you're going to be looking at. We don't want a typical driveway that's concrete and hard surface. We want it to almost go away. That's at the street level. The gardens on either side of the master, which is on the east side of the property, will be enclosed, and there'll be some elements with water features that you look out from there. We have an outdoor shower that'll happen out there, but it's very private. On the opposite side of the house, you'll see 4 fruitless olive trees that will make up a canopy for a dining area outside. That's between the exercise room and then an outdoor pavilion that happens on the west side, the west end of the yard there. The pool has an infinity edge, so as Mark had mentioned, it's flaring out and mimicking the architecture. The spa is raised infinity edge within the pool, but very low profile, just no more than 8 inches above the water line of the pool. So you're getting 2 planes of water, and then the end of it dropping off. But still, it's not like down the slope. It's probably only about 2 feet on 18 inches on one end of the pool and about 2.5 feet on the other end of the pool that's dropping off to the existing slope. Then we're trying to leave that's the south side of the lot, which slopes down to a natural ravine with boulders, and it's a natural runoff for the water. There's existing Palo Verdes, there's a couple existing Phyllophora palms, California fan palms that we want to leave and then accentuate with a few more so that we're not only for the neighbors below, they're not looking up at a slope, that we're looking down on something a little more interesting than the roofs of some of those homes as well. But all of that, and then it's all drought tolerant native plant material. So we're keeping that in mind as, and we're trying to be non-intrusive into the slope. We don't plan on doing any grading on it, or, you know, we just want to accentuate it from above and below. So that's the overall concept.
Thank you, Bennett. I'll point out as well, on the west side, which is the top of this sheet, we have a studio building as well as the outdoor pavilion, which flanks the olive trees Bennett mentioned. We do have a screen wall, which helps buffer the neighbor to the west, who is about 5 feet higher in grade from finished floor height to finished floor height. So this helps create a visual buffer between them, and also projects the view out to the southwest rather than directly to the west. So we screen that neighbor from our lot.
And they're already, I'll interject, they're already existing Rus lancia. It's pretty dense right now, so there is a buffer of vegetation that's existing already. That's why we're not showing much on that side of the pavilion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, thank you, Bennett and Mark. Are there any members of the public in the audience tonight who would like to speak about the project? If so, can you unmute and introduce yourself? All right. Questions for the applicant, fellow members?
I have a couple questions.
Tom?
I guess this would be for Mark. On the west side of the house, where you have the studio and then the pavilion, as you go from the studio south, there's a series of architectural elements that, you know, continue towards the south from the studio to the pavilion. And then there's a break in between them across the Olive Garden there. Do you have, so those look like they're to be like 9'6" to the top. And then you mentioned a screen wall that goes in between those. Is that correct?
Sure. Alex, will you switch to, let's see what sheet that is. AR06, please.
Which,
It should be the next one.
this one.
Yes. So this is a pure elevation looking from the west. So of course we don't live in elevation. This is purely an architectural drawing. The goal with those walls is to give the idea that the wall on the far left that originates at the studio is one singular wall that goes all the way to the pavilion. Much like a ruin, it would have been collapsed, broken over time. But by doing that, we allow landscaping and sight lines to go through it. Between those walls that you see in white, there are no subwalls, no fences, no screening. It's just purely landscaping, and it sets, especially on the middle portion, it sort of sets the tone for outdoor rooms. You can see just left and right of that middle slender wall, you see the outdoor dining table. So it serves as a backdrop for life on the opposite side of this wall, the opposite side of this elevation.
And then the canopy itself for the pavilion, in the elevation view, it shows that it's off-centered from the first support wall.
Correct. It slips past the support walls. Much of that is again to set the tone, let the cantilever breathe toward the hillside that falls off, where that
Can we bring up
that
that
overhang
slide
happens.
while you're talking? Sorry, Mark, wondering if
Yeah,
Alex
go
can
ahead.
bring up that slide to help support what you're saying here.
You say that one more
Tom, I believe you're talking about the roof line on the far right there. Is that correct?
Yes,
time?
correct.
Yeah. So, Sean, does that make sense to you? Just how that roof line is offset from the walls below it?
Yeah, I just thought maybe there was a 3D rendering of it that Alex could bring up here.
The overall aerial, Alex, may be a good one of the rear.
It's fine.
Yeah, so it's the bottom left rooftop with the solar panels on top. Yeah, so the idea here, we have a number of cantilever roofs, especially going toward the south on the main structure. We repeat this on the pavilion to create some dynamism. The hillside falls off right at the edge of that pavilion. So it gives this sense of levity as that roof extends past the edge of the hillside, past the limits of where the functional space stops. So the goal is to create a more dynamic environment with that pavilion rather than just having four corners with a solid roof on top. There's a little more going on than that.
And then beyond that, to the west would just be the 6-foot wrought iron fence.
Correct. There's a pool enclosure. What's not shown in this rendering, which Bennett mentioned, there is native landscaping at that location, which provides a buffer. It's actually on our client's lot, and Bennett can speak more into the specific type of planting that exists in that location if needed.
Okay. And the pool equipment will be screened though from the adjacent residents?
That's correct. Let me go back to the site plan. The pool equipment ends up on the east side of the property. Basically down at the bottom, there are a number of text notes there. We have both AC and pool equipment. We have a CMU wall screening the master garden, then a metal fence screening the equipment.
Okay, so on the west side, it's just like a AC unit? And
Correct.
like a couple.
There's one condenser
Package.
and 2 mini split units. Correct.
Okay.
Alex, can you bring up page 22, 23, sorry, of the booklet?
What photo would that be?
It's a axon aerial kind of photo looking southwest from the northeast. Tom, I think it might help you a bit.
Yeah.
It's the next page. Sorry, go back. One more. Oh, I thought it was there. There's 2 kind of axon aerials. It's marked at the lower right corner of the 11 by 17. It says aerial perspective, page 23.
Alex, I believe those are the last 2 slides.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
the last 2.
That's right. It's actually the very last slide of the.
That's the last slide I have. That's not a landscape slide.
Okay, well, I think they've explained it well. The other question I had is on the landscape plan, it calls out gravel to be determined. And is there any thoughts on what the material, so it's indicating graphically that, the whole front of the residence as well as the driveway is one material. And I guess my question is, there will be, a turning radius to come into the garage and so forth. And I'm just wondering, will the driveway be the same material? And is there an indication of what that will be that can handle that, backing in and out and the turning movement into the garage?
Yeah, it'll probably be, it'll like at least a 3/4 to 1 inch size gravel that happens there. If it ends up being a smaller size throughout, since there is a lot of it, we'd keep the same gravel, but a different size, for instance, in the front of the property. But a little heavier in the driveway. If there's traction, it'll probably be stabilized. So that we don't have that issue, as well as you can see, that's why we did a hard surface of concrete with the bands running through them at the garages, so that we're not tracking it. We're not tracking it inside of the garage. And then you'll see the band of concrete on the west side of the whole driveway, which you know, is like a stopping point, and then also acts as a place to wheel the trash cans out to the curb, etc.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, and this might be for the city, will they be required to put a standard driveway apron in where the driveway meets the street?
I believe that's a rolled curb currently, but that would probably be a question for engineering.
That is correct. It's a rolled curb. And it does pitch, it's pretty level at that point, but it does pitch down towards the garages slightly. So the gravel, meaning that the gravel would most likely would stay within the property opposed to. But we also, you know, if that's what's required, we could entertain putting a, you know, a hard surface just along the curb probably, and say an aggregate or something, so it sort of matches what we have.
Yeah, I think the only reason I raise the question is to maintain the integrity of your design.
Yeah, it's just to be inconspicuous, like there's not even a driveway there. That was the intent.
Right.
And it looks good.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Dorsey, there's a condition of approval on page 5 of the conditions relative to Stevens Road that basically says that they're just required to repair or replace the pavement for street improvement. But the sidewalk is deferred, so that's not required at this time. And that's really the extent of it, is really to repair and improve the adjacent pavement areas.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah. Any other committee members like to talk about the project? Well, thanks both you guys, and yeah, maybe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unless any other committee members have
Thank
direct
you.
questions, we will convene. All right. Tom, should we start with you?
I think they've answered all the questions that I had.
Okay.
I think it's nicely done and presented.
Mm-hmm. Will you have any recommendations for them on anything?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if Rick is on the call, because under number 4, it said construct a 6-inch driveway, concrete unless otherwise approved by engineering from the property line to the existing back at curb. So that's where I was trying to figure out if they'll have to put some kind of spandrel in there, or if the rolled curb is sufficient. The back of rolled curb would be sufficient to start the gravel.
Is Rick available, David?
Don't believe he's on the call.
Sorry, Alex.
I'm sorry, I don't believe he's on the call.
Okay. Yeah, well, I understand where you're going, Tom. As I look at page 2 of the 11 by 17s, it's sort of a cartoonish rendering there that a driveway looks not like a driveway, and it looks really nice. And it'd be a shame to lose that along the street there.
Right, because the
Which
property
really-
line setback from the curb.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Right.
Mhm. David, are you able to help shed any light on that?
Actually, I was just trying to get a hold of Mr. Minharas, but he doesn't appear to be at his desk. So unfortunately, we can't get specifics on it. But we certainly can provide the ARC's recommendation to our engineering office and make sure that those items are considered when they're reviewing the plans at plan check.
Mhm. It sounded like potentially the applicant or Bennett had an idea of some kind of exposed aggregate to match if worse came to worse. And
Yes, if that was necessary, I'm sure we could use the same gravel in, however wide of a shoulder sleeve that they need, at the behind the curb.
mhm.
I know you require it to be thicker too at that point. I think it's 6 inches thick for a driveway. But we'll have to determine then, how deep do they want it or the width of it, if it's required.
Yeah, well, sounds like Tom and I are in agreement that hopefully it's not required, but because we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Any other members like to comment? Steve?
Oh, I'm good. I think it's a nice looking project. I like the landscaping quite a bit.
Thank you.
John Walsh?
Yeah, there were a few things that struck me. One is it's a chunk of square footage, but I think one of the key things that is handled well is the breaking up of the massing. I think it's successful around that, certainly. It's got a visual lightness to it that both in elevation and just isometric and whatnot, the perspectives, it sort of, I think, does it justice. There are a couple little small things that I think are also work very successfully. I think that front garden is kind of clever. I mean, you basically sort of nailed the privacy issue without over fencing it and over building. And so I think it would be probably one of the more successful and delightful spaces in it. And I know a lot of discussion about the parking and all, and I was kind of wondering about the backup, but it looks, the side loading, I think, helps with all of that. And it just, it has kind of a wonderful lightness and a transparency to it that I think is sort of beyond the renderings. It will express. I think it's very successful. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
John McCoy?
Yeah, I know this site, and I think it's a very well executed project. The programming and layout, I know, will suit this client very well, and kudos to the design team.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, I agree with the comments that the other committee members made. It's a nice looking project. So thanks, guys, for presenting that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Yep. So anybody on the committee like to make a motion?
I will.
Yep, go ahead, John.
To approve with the conditions as outlined by engineering and planning.
Mhm. Anybody like to, John?
Second.
Okay. Yep, all those in favor?
Aye.
Mhm. Sounds good. Thank you, Mark and Bennett.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
So we're going to move on to unfinished business. Item number 3, Epstein Global for revisions to a minor architectural application for a remodel of an existing cannabis dispensary, 4765 East Ramon Road. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, the law here and committee members. So as you may recall, this item was reviewed by the committee on September 20th of this year, when the committee reviewed kind of the initial design for a repaint, some new rooftop screening, and really a limited scope for a tenant improvement and some additional exterior improvements to this existing cannabis dispensary. At that meeting, the committee recommended approval to the city council and provided some suggestions relative to improving the exterior, specifically the landscape area, the railing along the front, as well as some other minor recommendations. The item went to the city council on October 14th of this year and referred the matter to the committee for additional improvements to the project to really improve this corner of the city. And so staff provided the applicant with a series of items that we thought would help improve the design of the project. So I'll go over those here with you now. So the recommendations that we had were to provide enhancements to the building facades, including the front and side elevations, specifically additional improvements to the awning and lighting and some of the stucco areas or clerestory windows, which you see here. So what they're proposing now on the building itself, they are proposing to close these windows off, repair it with stucco. And so you'll see that in the elevation details here in just a moment, but they are proposing to replace the existing green awning with this blue awning here. The detail of this item is shown here at the top of your screen. So when we look at the elevation plan, you can see that there's some specific callouts here that's really related to replacing the stucco and repairing it, replacing the windows up here, repairing it with stucco, and then they're proposing to paint it a light gray color. And then the trim will be the navy blue color that you saw on the previous screen. And then the new light fixtures that are currently wall packs will be replaced with fully shielded light fixtures. And I'll show you that detail here in just a moment. On the south elevation, they are doing the same with the lighting and repairing a doorway here, repairing that with stucco and repainting that elevation as well. As you recall, they are proposing a screen for the rooftop mechanical equipment that is required for this business. So that is not changing, it remains the same. But as far as the wall packs that are on the elevation now, those will be replaced with this detail here that you see at the top right of the screen. So all four sides of the building will be painted. And they're proposing to, as I said, replace and repair stucco and improve the elevation. So this is the light gray color that they're proposing for the body of the building. And then this is the blue, the navy blue color that they're showing for the trim and the awning. This is the section view of that awning. And moving to the landscape area, they are proposing to plant a series of agave, Dietis grandiflora, Sperry periflora, and leucophyllum, as you can see here on the plan. There is a dark gray or black DG that is proposed within the planting areas as well for ground cover. And the leucophyllum will be along the edge of the building and the sidewalk areas. They are proposing the hand railings as recommended by the ARC at your previous review at the front entry of the property along Lamone Road. And they are proposing two planters, which I'll show you the details here in just a moment, at the kind of corners of this platform area. So this is the color view of that landscape plan, the side view of the proposed handrail that's going on both sides of the walkway, and then the planter detail for these circular planters here on the corners. So those are really the primary changes that the applicant is proposing based on the direction that we've given them and the direction from ARC. One item that's not identified in the plan that I did talk to the applicant about after this was, after we published the report, was relative to the wall, the planter wall along the edge of the property. That was a comment to repaint that wall to improve it. And so the applicant will be painting that wall to match the same color of the building. So with that, I will conclude my report and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Sean, you are muted.
Yep, thanks, David. Thanks, John. Is the applicant available?
Yes, this is Andrew Poppy from Epstein.
Yep. Would you like to make any comments, presentation? If so, we'd like to limit you to 10 minutes, if possible.
Sure, I don't think I'll take 10 minutes,
Okay.
but based on the comments and review from our last session, the client and Epstein worked together to devise a plan that would satisfy what these what comments would need to be satisfied for this. The client is well aware of the current condition of the building and wants to make it look much better, obviously for their own business. They're proposing to replace all of the stucco and then paint and replace and repair the eaves as necessary. We know that a lot of the existing eaves and the trim work on that building, some of it's just dry rotted out. That will be replaced as well to bring the building up to a better look. The landscaping will greatly improve, and I also think will tie into the nice landscaping that the city has put into the median at that street right directly outside of that. It will tie into that well. And of course, you know, the screening and everything that we're introducing into this, half of the mechanical units currently are not screened on that building. All of those improvements will really give a lot of curb appeal to that building and improve the area.
All right. Thank you. Any members of the public, would you like to comment on the project? If so, please unmute your microphone and join us. So, well, great. I don't see any members of the public. So, committee members, let's get started having a chat about this. John, can I start with you? Mr. Walsh.
Yes, yes. First, was a question for David. Is the signage part of this review?
So they provided details what their intention is for the signs. We don't have the specific dimensions on the signs. I think they have an overall dimension of the monument sign, but we don't have details on the size of the awning sign to do a full evaluation of that. So that item may have to come back for ARC review unless we still have to do the evaluation as to compliance with the zoning code. So if there's any issues that the committee has in concept with the signage, certainly we're happy to take those comments now.
Oh, okay. No, that's good. Thank you. Just as an overview, it is well improved in terms of what we had earlier reviewed, certainly. And it looks like a good amount of thought into the detailing of a lot of the hardscape pieces. One thing that did strike me about the signage is the front sign, and so they have not been reviewed for compliance. Is that correct, David? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just struck. It's kind of very large. The the overall awning sign, the font, the lettering, etc. When you look at the before and after, it was kind of striking. Sean, you're muted.
Thanks, John.
No problem.
Yep. As I understand it from you, that was kind of a comment or rhetorical to staff there.
Mhm.
Now on the signage, when David and I had spoke about this project beforehand, he had kind of indicated to me that we were not really going to review the signage. I hadn't gone through its full review. But shall we start with a discussion now about the project? And if so, John, would you like to start us off? John Walsh.
No, I start with somebody else, please. Sean.
Okay, Tom, there's a lot of landscape changes and updates here since the last go around. How about you start us out?
No, I think they've done a nice job in design of addressing our comments previously. And I think with the contemporary design that they're going with in the landscape, I think it works fine. I know there was a large existing Mediterranean fan palm out front. My initial recommendation was if they could work that into the design, but based on the geometry and the plant types that they have, I think it works well with the program that they're presenting.
I just want to bounce this off you, Tom. No real trees of any kind up front, which I suppose might be good in terms of not blocking signage, but wondering what I know you were just mentioned you were hoping to save one tree. You seem to be okay with having none at all.
Yeah, I mean, the only areas that I could see where it could use some height is maybe on, either side of the storefront and the glass and so forth there. But, with the other improvements, it appears that they want to kind of portray the building and not, frame it with any other taller material.
All right. I have a question or two actually for the applicant. So the wall pack lighting, there's a couple different lights shown, and I see some specs but not 100% specifications. If I don't ask, John McCoy's going to ask. What's the color of the lighting temperature? Have you thought about that much in terms of the Kelvin color? And I see some of the lumens called out just based on the model, but it's a little bit vague, I think, on some of them.
I believe in the drawings, the lighting fixtures are called out as 3000 Kelvin.
Where do you see that?
It should be on the RCP spec. There should be specs listed on the RCP that we shared with the planning department that calls out each light fixture. And within that schedule, it should have not only the wattage, but also the temperature.
Help me find that sheet if you could. Staff or applicant.
It's on E500. There are, towards the, let's say the top chart, lower portion has callouts. So they did in fact state that.
And that goes for the light. Is there lighting underneath the canopy, the awning?
Yes, there has to be. So those are recessed can lights that would be underneath there that would light the way to get to the parking area and along the, I believe it's the west side of the building. Eve.
And also 3000 Kelvin.
Yes, it should all match.
Yeah, are those dimmable underneath the awning?
They could be. I don't know that they're specified as dimmable right now.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
will all be LED.
Okay, thank you. John McCoy?
Continue on that line. How many lights are under the canopy? Do we have this?
I believe that there is 3 or 4. I'd have to look at the RCP.
And so while they are LED and I missed the let's see, I'm reading here.
There's 3 lights underneath that canopy up front.
And do we know the wattage on those?
Yes, of course, we specified those light fixtures.
I see 120 volt.
Sean,
Yeah,
there is a schedule on E500 of the plan that that shows the color temperature.
I see it now.
Yeah, we've got that. Trying to, question is basically the brightness level of underneath the canopy. And yes, I would agree with where Sean was going, that should be dimmable. We don't want, while the wall packs are appropriate, you don't want, you want some balance in there, not just blowing out the front doors.
Mhm. Or if it appears too much, it'd be nice to be able to dim it down. So that'd be nice to add ahead of time.
Yeah.
There's also an ADA element that we have to provide enough light because this is an egress path. So we made sure that we were up to that level.
Okay. So I also agree with Tom on the landscape. I think with what they have proposed, it's a great improvement, and the geometric layout works with this project.
Yep. Thanks, John. Mr. Payline?
I of course didn't see the first part because I was absent during that meeting, but it seems like, after reading all the questions and comments that the committee had, it seems like they've addressed everything. So I'm very comfortable with it.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Nothing to add.
All right. Yeah, well, I agree. It seems like there's been some real improvements, and I think staff and the applicant have been working back and forth to try to move this ahead. Would anyone like to propose a motion here? I might, if no one else does. Shall I?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the project with the conditions that staff has outlined, and maybe an added condition of making sure that the awning lights are dimmable. And I think as a precautionary measure, you might add that, yeah, John, I think brought up some good points about the signage. So if there's future signage to be presented, maybe that could be preemptively taken into consideration what John had to say, which I think I was beginning to agree with. So that might come up again later. Yeah, so that's my motion.
I will second.
Is it possible to add a comment or amendment to the motion?
Sure.
The comment or amendment to the motion would be if they could have their landscape architect look at relocating the existing Mediterranean palm that's out there into one of the open squares that they show on their site plan, and then match it on the other side with a very similar size plant. And that would help with Chairman Locklear's comment about trying to get some height out there in the front. And it would still maintain the geometry that they've proposed in the understory plantings.
And potentially not really block the signage too much if that canopy was up pretty high also.
Right, those could be cleaned up and you'd see more of the branching effect. And I would leave that more as a recommendation than a condition.
Okay. Understood. So all sounds good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. All right. Looks like that was unanimous. Two more items here. How's everybody feeling? And should we take a short few-minute recess? Anyone need a quick break? Or shall we push on?
I think we're good. Motor on.
Sean,
All right. Yep. So we're on to item 4 now. Well, thanks guys for that previous project. Item 4, Adam Shahab and Rina Lazarian Shahab, owners for a major architectural application for the construction of a 4,220 square foot single family residence located at 2260 North Sunrise Way. Staff, would you have a staff report?
Yes, I'll share my screen here. Okay, so it's a single-family residential new construction just north of Vistacino on a vacant lot. As you can see, it is completely developed around the vacant parcel. This slide also right on the right here, yes, defines the ultimate right-of-way that engineering has conditioned for the parcel. That said, you may have noticed in the conditions that they have deferred a fair amount of the right-of-way improvements, and that's because they don't plan on making the applicant put in the exact sidewalk, or they're going to take up this asphalt and have them put in a curb and sidewalk, but that's it. They will enforce the other right-of-way improvements when they take the ultimate right-of-way. So here is the street facade of the home. It has kind of a Mediterranean flair design, which will blend with the neighborhood. The neighborhoods of older architecture, when more of this style of design was more popular in town. And then here are the elevations, this being the rear of the top. 4-car garage, which I thought was nicely designed so that it's not facing the street. So the landscaping was a little bit of a sticking point with planning only because of the sedum plant. So we have added a condition for the applicant to replace this with something that is called out in the lush and efficient Coachella Valley Water District's lush and efficient handbook. So and They will have benches. It will be designed with the sedum, the barrel cactus, and the 4 benches. And the 4 Palo Verde trees, museum Palo Verde trees. And the applicant is not proposing any walls. I asked him this early on. He wants to leave it open to the street. These are the proposed lighting fixtures. As you can see, the dimensions, these will be added, wall mounted to the house. And he's proposing 2 light poles, one in the front here and one in the back in the future pool area. So, I mean, that's kind of like he wants to create this kind of like a park-like setting in front of his house.
Sorry. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Good. Any thoughts?
I'll wait till you're done with your report. Sorry, Richard, didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm sorry?
Didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I was done. I was done.
Oh, were you? Okay. All right. Yeah, well, any questions for staff from the committee members? Seeing none. Is the applicant here, and would they like to present the project?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Adam Shihab. My wife is not available because she got pulled into a meeting after work. So she's still in a meeting. But basically, my wife and I designed this house. And then we took the designs to the architect so he can make it, do their own thing and present it in an acceptable manner. What we try to do here is basically design a retirement home for ourselves. We're going to retire in a couple of years. And we try to be consistent with the neighborhood. I know there was some discussion about a front wall. We feel that if we put just a white picket fence, it will leave the house more open, more inviting kind of a deal, rather than prohibitive to the neighborhood. The pool, we're not going to put a pool for a few years until my godson learns how to swim, basically. He's only 9 years old. So we will not put a pool for a few years until we feel it's safe enough. The idea of a park, we wanted to have some sitting area, and with a lot of help from Richard Bruno, Mr. Bruno, he made it, gave me a lot of advice, and the idea of a park developed that way. I'm very grateful to his pointers and so on for the front yard. I can answer any questions if you have any.
You mind repeating that last point? You were, I think, thanking Richard Bruno for something with the front yard.
Yes, I was planning the front yard. I was going to make, initially I was just going to put some gravel and so on. And then it developed over time, back and forth. I got a lot of advice on to make it nice, make it like a park light, Originally, I just wanted to put some stones and some gravel, stuff like that. But the idea developed, and he advised me to put the trees, to put some shade on top of the benches. I wanted to put the benches in, but he suggested I put the trees to put shade on top of the benches, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for that. It makes it much more user-friendly, I guess, when the sun is shining.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, committee members? Any questions for the applicant? Shall we move on to discussion time? And John Walsh, would you like to lead us?
I'm going to start with a question.
Okay.
Where do these benches appear in plan? I did not see. That would be back to the applicant. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm tardy with my question to him.
Understood. I can.
Oh, I see. I get it.
You see him now.
Yeah.
Interesting. So would that lead to any further discussion or comments amongst ourselves here?
I think it is an interesting approach to the use of the front yard. It is not really conventional for what you see along the boulevard there. I'm kind of having trouble getting my head around it.
Be a bit of a home.
Yeah, I'll comment. I think, I mean, obviously the setback is really large. It's 87 feet from the street. And I'm wondering, as I'm looking at the Google Maps, what the kind of, if that's consistent with the setbacks of the other homes. They look like they are pushed back pretty far on their lots.
Right.
So it seems like that's kind of the case. And then the only other comment I heard that kind of scared me a little bit was the white picket fence. I don't think that's really appropriate for the desert. And I don't think I've ever seen one in this area. So be a little concerned with that.
I didn't hear that comment myself. Steve, would the applicant like to clarify that?
Yes. If a white picket fence is not acceptable, I can put a wall. I just did not want the house to to have a prohibitive front, So if it has a park theme, and you see, originally, basically, what I would love to have is a place to hang out outside the actual building. That's where the idea of all these benches came in. But because of the requirements for the setback, there's no room to put it behind the house, so it had to go in the front of the house.
Sure.
So to put it in front of the house, if you see a park anywhere, a park would not have any fence or any walls around it. It would part of a park is to be open.
Sure.
However, if you guys would like a wall in front of the house, I can do that. That will provide me with more privacy. But I was thinking about an open feeling to the yard. And it's not a big privacy issue because, in the future, swimming pool will be in the back. So people will be fully clothed, I think. So it's not going to be an issue of privacy. We will just be sitting there drinking tea and coffee, or reading a book.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think you need a wall. I just, the idea of a white picket fence in this area doesn't seem to mesh. So whether it's a kind of a low retaining wall or, like a low garden wall that gives you a little bit of separation from the street, I don't think it needs to be certainly a 5-foot wall to block view or anything. But I think it would provide you a little bit of a buffer between kind of you and the street.
Well, I can, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's my thought.
I can do what the house to the right has done. The house to the right has a fence with vegetation growing through interlaced with the wood.
Yeah,
I think
I
that,
can do something like that, or whatever you require, I will do. I mean, it's whatever the requirements are, I will do them.
mhm. We're gonna have a little discussion about that, Mr. Shahab, and so let us report back to you, but let's keep chatting. Steve, did you have more?
nope,
comments
that
or
was my,
thoughts?
that was my bigger issues.
May
Mhm.
I, Sean, may I grab the floor again and
Sure,
build from an
sure
earlier
can, John. Yep.
comment and a question? Mr. Shahab, I think that your attempt at buffering between the street and the house is laudable and good. And the only thing that kind of puzzled me a little bit is that when I saw park, to me means softscape, planting, and shade trees. And when I see a very kind of a formal layout of some concrete hardscape and not a lot of trees, but a lot of geometric structure, it maybe defeats the attempt to have a very pretty and sweeping soft buffer between the house and the street. You know, God knows you can drive around in older suburban areas and that setback that older grand houses can have is lovely and an asset. And I kind of think you maybe, it sounds as though you want to use that front yard. And I think that would be a great thing. And it just needs development of softscape and kind of ease up on the formal hardscape thing. And I think it might come closer to hitting the target. Thank you.
Okay, well, these are walkways to move around, basically, you know, but
I see. Yeah.
you know, they the main thing is the sitting area and the shade from the trees. But if you object to something, I can revise it. I mean, it's
We're gonna keep chatting about it for a little bit, but I have another question for you, just to keep going down the same line. So I think what John Walsh was asking you or commenting on, or maybe encouraging you to do, was not necessarily, I don't think any of us would be responsible to tell you that you need to build a wall. I think there's lots of ways that it potentially could achieve what it sounds like you're trying to achieve, which is a softening of the facade, creating a more park-like environment that you can go out and enjoy. And then I wonder if further, is there some way that might screen the house and the hardscape a bit more from the street and the street view? And as I march up and down the street on street view here, I see that it looks like that's potentially what your neighbors are trying to do, is maybe screen some of their hardscape or their parked vehicles and guest parking and things like that, and create a bit more of a private garden area for themselves to enjoy and not necessarily be open to the traffic noise and motion constantly. So, you know, I think there could be more plants that could be added. I think you've got a lot of plants on the west side of the building, when potentially maybe you'd like some on the south and west also, if you intend to sit under them for shade throughout the day, particularly the morning. I don't know that these would provide any shade for you at all around this bench area from the east. So maybe there's another layer of trees you'd like to consider, or moving the trees around, or creating these kind of quads of trees around your bench vignettes there. Are all ideas. Different plant material that might create a medium, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot high hedge, or a meandering height hedge, I think are potential ideas. One of the things that jumps out at me, that's to me particularly uninviting about the design, is the amount of hardscape on the north side of the building. And so, although I appreciate that's your garage and you'd like some hammerhead space to be able to back out of the garage and potentially nose out of the driveway, I would think that along that north property line, you might be able to cut some of that hardscape back 3 feet, 2.5 feet, create a little hedge greenery along that side, and really cut down on what's potential to be a very hot, hard surface, uninviting area that you would be looking at as you look across your front garden park-like area there. So what I'm pointing at is, yeah, the far left property line, which I believe that to be your north property line. Yeah.
Actually, there is a 4-foot gap between the driveway and an existing wall. I can put plants in that area.
So I would encourage that, and I might encourage some of the other things I said, more layering of maybe additional trees, potentially on the east side of that row of trees you have on the west street side there.
I will do that.
Yeah. Again, I don't think anyone's telling you not to put a wall there, or to put a wall there, but these are just some ideas that might help soften and help you achieve your goals there.
And I also think having even if it's planting that provides you a little bit of buffer there will also reduce the street noise to that front area as well. So I think that might be a benefit for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you. Thank you for the suggestions. I will do these things.
Yeah, just one second. I want to hear from Tom.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Chairman. There in our packet, there is an updated site plan that does show a planting bed between the driveway and the existing wall. And one of the thoughts I had, well, I'm going to start in a couple areas. One is with the elevation of the structure itself. And I'm looking at the on sheet A201 and the proportions, of the windows. I don't know if those are bedroom suites, but the size of the windows in proportion to the facade of the building. The ones on the ends, I don't know if they have any kind of reveal around them or they're inset a little bit, but they just seem like they could be larger in size and in better proportion to the facade of the building in that area. And then secondly, on the site plan, and I'm understanding, based on the explanations, about the kind of the formalized garden areas. I think there could be something where you place some trees in each one of those squares. And then I'd also like to see some foundation planting or planting up between the last walkway and the building itself. I think that there's the opportunity to frame the structure and to create a more pleasing aesthetic, both of the facade of the building and really give this area, as you mentioned, that park-like atmosphere. And then thirdly, I think, I'm not sure what the setback would have to be for any type of wall, but maybe there could even be a low wall. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 or 6 feet, but I feel that with the busyness and the traffic along that street, that even a low wall would be advantageous to kind of give that sense of privacy and personal space away from the street. And so I would defer to planning on what the setback of, even if it was like a 42-inch wall or some kind of low wall, if he wanted to keep most of that open.
A 4-foot high wall can be constructed on the property line.
On the property, okay. And that would be the dark line we see where it says right-of-way dedication between.
That's correct.
Yeah, where he's calling out the fence right now. Yeah, and I think each of those squares or those shapes could be, it's almost going towards a formal garden look where you could have, as Chairman Locklear mentioned, either reinforce the design with, low material, medium hedge material, just build upon the geometry there and create the atmosphere that you're looking for.
Okay.
But I think we do need to see a more developed landscape plan that reflects the proposed site plan and addresses some of these other items that we have talked about.
Okay,
Thanks, Tom.
I'll make one more quick observation.
Sure.
The one thing you may want to think about as well is I'm looking at, and again, this is you can do what you want. But having an AC unit and pool equipment and trash enclosures right there beside your pool is probably not going to be a good place for those. Because, if you're trying to use the pool and the air conditioner's on, the pool equipment's on, it's going to be pretty noisy there right outside of the back of the house. So you may want to think about where those, that there may be better locations for those away from the future pool.
And I just made another op, and even the locations of the benches, they're kind of on your axis for your walkways there, and they could be, maybe put more along the north, rather than right in the middle, blocking your walking path along the, north-south or east-west axes, of those planting areas.
Or even rotated 45 from where they're shown now might allow.
Right, exactly.
Population.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, along that line with the axes and your walkways, you've also got a light post smack on axis with your front door. So visual cue
Right.
of the center line of your house is really broken by having some type of fixture like this. They're not a standard choice for residences in this town. And then I see you've got two of them. One at the back property line, which I think will possibly concern the neighbors. As I look at the height of this, it's 7.5 feet, and those light bulbs will be up above any wall, perimeter wall on the back. And I think your neighbors may have an issue with lighting up their backyards from your fixture.
should I remove them?
I wonder. I wonder if you can't achieve something a bit more subtle, but with the same impact that achieves your lighting needs with some low voltage landscape lighting that just kind of candle lights the yard. Yeah. I think they might become problematic. I think John McCoy's talking about the rear neighbor, but as I look at that front one again, also, I wonder if it's not, I don't know, kind of fighting with the architecture and the subtleties that you're trying to achieve here.
Well, would it be a good idea to remove them? And if I'm putting a wall in the front, I can attach lights to the wall.
Yeah, if you're up for that, I think that's a direction that John and I would be interested in.
Yes.
Okay, well, I can remove these two highlights and then put a front wall and attach lights, 3 lights to the front wall.
Yeah.
From on the inside of the front wall.
Understood.
Right.
Well, guys, thanks.
No, thank you. I mean, I want the house to be good. It's
Yeah. Any other members have closing comments?
Nope, that's all I have.
Yep. Anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think I would make a motion to approve with a list of conditions to be worked out with planning staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Toward that end, I've been keeping track. May I give my list that I've
I
heard?
would like that very much.
Here we go.
Mhm.
Number one, restudy the window proportions
Mm.
with an eye toward making them a bit larger and more in scale with the elevations.
Front windows.
I'm sorry, the exterior windows. Did I say front?
No, you didn't say front, side, anything. You just said windows. So you just mean general.
Yes,
all the
in
windows.
general. And I would leave it to staff to exercise some direction there.
Sure.
Number two, to study and possibly amend the hardscape plan that would involve possible relocation or adjustment of the location of the benches. The addition of a low garden wall near the street. Elimination of the lamp posts and restudying of the exterior lighting. And relocation of the mechanical equipment and or the trash cans and the pool equipment at the rear, a better solution.
So can I piggyback on two of those?
Please.
Yep. So if the trash and equipment enclosure, let's say, for some reason got relocated to the north side, which is where the driveway is, I would say one thing that would be critical there is that it's also screened from the street and the public view and the public right of way. Screened, meaning
Yes.
could be a wall, could be landscape, could be both.
Right.
It seems like a better place to put it over on the driveway side, trash
Oh, yes.
enclosure. Yeah.
Oh,
But
yes.
needs to be screened. The other thing is if so item 2, I wanted to piggyback on the addition of a low garden wall, no height determined, dealer's choice. But I think if that wall got added somewhere along the property line where I think he's allowed to build 4.6 maximum height at the property line, I think that should be softened with some landscaping material, not low ground cover, but somewhere between low ground cover and a tall hedge, somewhere in between there. Doesn't have to be a tall hedge, but can't be just a low ground cover to help soften that. Could be periodically, could be continuously along the street side of that low wall, because I think there's setting up an opportunity there where that might be a lot of more of this hard on hard surface. I think we want to try to.
It may backfire, yes.
Yeah. Mhm. So that was my 2 add-ons.
And that's kind of all I've been hearing, in
That's
terms of
it.
other
Mhm.
comments.
Well, I'll second that.
And could I add that we see a more developed landscape plan for the site?
So you think you want to see that back, Tom, not have them work with
And
staff?
I'd be happy to work with staff on it.
Okay,
Great.
sort of a micro subcommittee.
Micro subcommittee.
Aha. Yeah. Well, I'll still second that. So sounds like we have a motion.
Somebody must have joined me.
So the last suggestion by member Dozy, does member Walsh and Lockyer accept that as an amendment or an addition to the conditions previously stated?
I do.
Sure do.
Okay. So we have the 6 added comments from the committee. Motion.
Yeah.
Take a vote.
Yep. Shall we get a count on the ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was easy.
Motion passes
Right.
5-0.
Yep. Item 5, last one. Everybody still good to push on through this?
Yep. Crank through.
Yep, okay. Palm Springs Propco Holdings LLC for a minor application for an existing, minor architectural application for an existing 12,000 square foot commercial center to include facade and landscape improvements at the former Sosa Market Shopping Center located 3700 East Vistachino, which is the northeast corner of Vistachino and Gene Autry. Staff report.
Glenn, we've got both screens on the display. And you're muted.
Sorry about that. Let me get it so it's. Can you see that now? Is it full screen?
No.
Not really.
Well,
Let me stop sharing. Let's try again. How's that?
Yay.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. You'd think after all these years, we'd have it figured out. So this is the former Sosa Market at the corner of Gene Autry Trail and Vistachino. So here's an aerial photograph of the site. The Architecture Review Committee reviewed this project way back in 2019 for a renovation of the shopping center and the parking lot and landscaping. And this is all because there's a cannabis dispensary and lounge that is in Unit A, which is the first unit on the corner of the building facing Gene Autry Trail. So they were required to come in and get approval of the renovation of the front of the building. So this is a current photograph showing the mansard roof that's there, and then the units that include a market, pole bar, and then the cannabis truly leaf is at the end of the building. So looking at the proposed landscape plan, let me zoom in here. They are proposing a series of shrubs and plants along Vistachino and Gene Autry Trail. Keeping in mind, and I'm going to show the ARC the previously approved plan in just a minute, but this is what they're proposing now. So you'll see there's a series of plants along the street. This is the plan that was originally approved, and I'm sorry this is in your packet, but you'll see that they had up to 14 Palo Verdes trees that were to be planted along the street within the reworked parking lot. And in this proposal, they are not going to rework the parking lot. They're going to restripe it and keep it as is. This is all to scale down the cost of the project. And they'll provide that to you in just a minute.
Glenn, I'm sorry, can you just repeat? This plan we're looking at right now was what again?
Was approved in 2019 by the Architectural Review Committee. So this is what they're proposing now, which is in your packet, and this is what approved. And you see that the parking lot is different. The number of trees have been eliminated. And looking at the facade of the building, they are proposing to leave the mansard roof, but then skin it in a standing seam metal in a gray color. So the unit here in white is where the cannabis dispensary lounge will be. The pole bar is in the middle here, and you'll see there's a varying shades of gray and white as you go east towards the market, which is on the east end of the building. The rear of the building will be painted white, and that's what this elevation is. And then the sides of the building, this is the west side of the building, which is where the cannabis dispensary and lounge will be, and the east side is the market at the end. So you'll see that the standing seam metal roof wraps around both sides. Once again, there's a material board that's in your packet showing the colors that are proposed. And then we'll move on to what was approved by the Architectural Review Committee back in 2019. You'll see that it was a more linear horizontal roofs that removed the mansard roof, but then added different elements to add height to provide screening for mechanical equipment on the roof. So this was what was approved, and they are not looking to do this design. So looking at some photographs that are currently there, the site was when it was built, it was not part of the city, it was in Riverside County. So some records on it are not specifically easy to find. Oops, sorry. Pictures. So on the corner, there is a existing monument sign that will be removed, and you'll see the state of these mature palms that are there now. So going back to the landscape plan, as I mentioned, you'll see that the parking lot is not changing. There are two entrances off of Executive Drive, one off of Gene Autry Trail, and they're going to just slurry seal. The lighting will stay the same. So Member Lockyer, that concludes my report, and the applicant is here.
Mhm. Any questions for staff?
No, I don't have any questions for staff.
That was more for the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But thank you. You're crystal
I
clear.
have a
on this
question for
project.
Glenn.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Glenn, the reason this is coming back to us is they
Well-
don't want to proceed with the approved plan?
One of the reasons, the cannabis ordinance requires that the ARC review exterior changes to the building. So that's one of the reasons why. So they could build it as was approved in 2019, but they are not asking to do that. So there's been a revision, and that requires it to come back to you.
Is there anything within this revision that puts them outside of the parameters for shade requirements?
Well, yeah, the plan does not meet shade requirements. If in the original landscape plan, there were walls that were added along the parking lot to screen the parking, which have been eliminated from the project. So keep in mind that staff is trying to make the site look better than it does now. And this obviously is not the best that 2019 plan provided, but this is what the applicant is looking to do.
thanks, Glenn. John, did you have Walsh, did you have a question for Glenn?
No.
Okay. Mhm. Looked like you were debating.
Oh, I'm just thinking.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. So no more questions. Tom, we'll move on to the applicant and have the applicant got to try to keep it to 10 minutes or less. Would you mind presenting the project?
Yeah, Dave Madden, architect. I did the original design and we did the revised design. The original design was going to be a shared financial burden from the site owner, building owner with True Leaf. After everything was approved and the pricing came in, the building owner decided not to participate at all in any of the improvements for the approved design. True Leaf wants to be in the site. They want a better site, but they're footing this bill on their own. The slurring of the restriping, the landscaping, the standing seam metal building roofing, they're doing this out of their own pocket for the entire building.
and the owner of the building is not participating. So we're basically just asking for some mercy and grace to accommodate improving the site. I know we're short on landscape shading, but truly, we already have a permit for the TI to be done. But True Leaf still wants to go into the site. So it's a financial burden on True Leaf to do everything that is presented. That seems quite extensive and quite gracious on True Leaf's part for just a TI for the entire site and the building.
I'm going to go back to thank you very much. I'm assuming that concludes your presentation. Yep. Glenn, any comment on that? In that meaning, my specific question, you know, is the building, it's got an owner that I'm assuming has been a long-term owner based on what I just heard Dave say, and that there is now a tenant, and the tenant wants to improve the landscape. Why, I don't know, but is he being asked to?
Yes, the original approval still stands, and planning division will require them to build or install the landscaping or the exterior renovations in order to get the occupancy of the cannabis dispensary. So we would not approve this at staff level. We needed to bring it to you all to comment, make suggestions, review it before the planning division acts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I think I'm clear now. And yeah, so the architectural improvements, the standing seam metal roof, that's all, it's what we're looking at is what's being proposed.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have a question. Now, when you presented that, and this question might be for you, Dave, but Glenn, when you presented the project, you said they were going to skin the roof. I don't know, does that mean like do something over top of the tile?
No, we're removing the tile and then reinstalling standing seam.
Got it. Okay. Just sounded like a funny phrase. Why white is one of my questions to you. Well, why a white building in this environment?
Just trying to keep it all kind of neutral colors and then change the color of the facade as we go down towards the market. But we're open to, you know, painting it any color deemed by staff.
Okay.
As well as the gray standing seam sheet metal roofing can be changed color-wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just wanted to understand the logic behind what you were, if there was something I didn't understand. Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant from committee members? Or better yet, hold on a second. I don't think we let members of the public chime in if there are any. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on the project at this time? If so, please unmute your microphone and announce yourself. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go back to that question. Any of the committee members, would you have any questions for the applicant? All right. Don't see any. So I'm going to thank you, applicant. We're going to have a little discussion now and have a little chat about project. And would anyone like to go first? If not, I can begin.
I'll start.
All right, Tom.
This is for Glenn. The current parking count, does it meet, exceed, or is it under what the use would require?
The it requires 43 spaces and they have 46, so it meets the required.
Okay. And the previously approved plan would also meet that same requirement?
It did, the layout was different. There was a elimination of the median, the strip in the center. So it was, we would not have approved it. It wasn't parked. I don't know off the top of my head what the number was in the previous, but it would have met.
No, and I remember it, and I think, I don't know if Dave even brought it back 1 or 2 times to us for reviewing of the structure and the architecture as well. So, okay, thank you.
It went through a different, different versions, the exterior did and the parking lot.
Tom, you want to continue with discussion about the project with committee members?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can support what's being proposed here.
Yeah. Specifics?
Just that the landscape plan doesn't meet the standards. I think the facade of the building, you know, just being a straight shot across there and then different degrees of color in it, lacks of any type of continuity or design vocabulary, you know, so yeah, I just, you know, the parking layout, there was, you know, recommendations how that was improved, the circulation was improved, the low screen wall that is required or berming along the street to screen the cars. I don't see that in this latest plan. And I just don't think that it meets the city standards, even as those other corners of Gino Autry and Vistacino have developed, you know, on the southwest side and on the west side. I think the original plan was well put together, and this doesn't come up to that standard.
Yeah. Tom, I agree with you 100%. And so when I look at this project and what's being proposed here, particularly just beginning with the site plan and the landscape plan, I'll even rewind behind that a little bit. So I come down this road a lot in the mornings, and you getting hung up at that light there, heading westbound. You're forced to look at this building, and yeah, it's far from attractive, and yet I see this now as an opportunity and thought, well, wow, this is great. These folks are going to do something with this building here, and initially, and for a long time, I didn't even know this was City of Palm Springs, because I thought, I see that sign catty corner from it at the southwest corner that says Palm Springs, which to me, I feel like, well, maybe Gene Autry is the border there. And so what's east of that must be Cathedral City. And until when I saw this project and go, wow, okay, that's city property. Now that's great. Now, but now this gateway to Palm Springs at kind of the northern town with folks coming from east to heading west into Palm Springs. What a great opportunity is to beautify pretty much the last dilapidated corner of this intersection here as the gateway into the city. And I think I take a look at this landscape plan and I go, gosh, this is not much better than what's there now. And what's there now is hideous. And I'd say that the building, there's some improvements, like a standing seam metal roof, to me is going in the right direction, or could be if they're looking for that style building. But I look at the parking lot, I go, God, there's really no trees being proposed. There's no parking lot shading. It seems like there's far too many spaces in a row before you're required to have those sort of finger islands for shade trees and things like that. I think it's 10 spaces maximum before you're required to do that. And I think most people try to design those optimally. So maybe there's more along the south and kind of feather or get away from them as you move north through the project. but I think there's a lot of opportunity to really make that much less hard and black and dilapidated asphalt feeling, to try to dissipate that and improve that and make that go away. And to me, one of the main improvements, if I owned this building or I bought it, I would think, gosh, all of the opportunity here and the beautification of this building is really in the landscape. And that's where it really has a chance to shine and make this a much more valuable property, desirable property, and a building where people might want to frequent, shop, rent a space, lease a space, or potentially buy the building someday and do more with it. And without that layer of landscaping improvement here, I couldn't support this either. I don't see how this helps this gateway into the city. And I feel like this needs a lot of work. And yet, I look at the plans that you presented, Glenn, and I think that there was a lot of merit there in the original plans. And I think that maybe there needs to be some compromise between what was originally proposed and what's proposed today. But I don't know why anyone gets passed, because they've got tenants to fill, which seems like they can, and yet they say they don't have the money to make the improvements. I don't know where to go from there, other than I'd like to see the improvements. And to me, this is not much of an improvement. Got to look a hell of a lot more like what that original proposal looks like, particularly in terms of the landscape. I'm a little less fussed about the architecture, because I think that was going in the right direction. Again, with the standing seam metal roof, I think that'd be another layer of critique. But I think really this one starts as a gateway to the city, and some street facade improvements on the way this building reads and looks and presents itself to the city and everyone coming into it along that major thoroughfare. To me, really starts with the landscape and the site improvements, screening of that parking lot. Whew.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I just say, this is disappointing, because I was actually looking forward to seeing this building improved based on what we approved, and to see it come back in this kind of haphazard fashion is unfortunate. It's just shocking that the owner is trying to make one tenant pay for everything, for all these improvements, just to lease a space there is bizarre to me. When they have actually owned the property. So.
Thanks, Steve. John McCoy.
I have nothing new to add.
You don't want to ask about the lighting yet or anything?
I think I asked about it last time, and we left what is existing, and it was already stated there's no budget to. Now, my brother-in-law used to have a term that he used called taking the sin off. When something was really horrible, what can you do to slightly improve it? And that's kind of what this does. And I don't even see a lot of longevity in what is presented here. So yeah, I'd have to concur with what you were saying, Sean.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a good point. I think what you said is you don't see a lot of longevity to what is presented here. And that's kind of the way I looked at some of this plant material also, is I felt like, gosh, this is going to look like it does today, a year from now, when 75% of those plants die. Yep. I don't see the improvement at all. So thanks, Mr. Walsh.
I just, simplistically, as I look at this, it's one of those cases where if you were to prioritize building or parking lot, the parking lot kind of controls that space for a lot of reasons. And I actually think that to hang on to that mansard roof and try to resurrect it in some fashion is not a bad idea. But overall, what is presented here is is kind of a big disappointment. And I think, Sean, you're absolutely correct. Gateway to the city. And it's visually important as an artery and what goes on that corner. Also, the the dichotomy between how the other corners are developed and this is a glaring request for an explanation as to why. Anyway, I can kind of round this out with a motion.
Do it. Do it, baby.
I would move to deny.
Yeah. Well, that was a
Second,
short and sweet motion. Mhm. You seconded, Steve, I think?
I'll second.
Oh, was it Tom?
either one.
Yeah, so that's not much encouragement there, but okay, let's have a vote on that. All those in favor of the denial? Say aye.
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 Aye. Well, there you have it. That was unanimous. Thanks, Dave. I'm sure staff will have some comments to take back to your client.
Yeah, I will report back to them in the morning. They're in Florida.
Mhm.
Reliefs out of Florida. So I will contact them in the morning. And probably the next step would be to enhance the landscaping and keeping the mansard roofing, but maybe do some pop out squares that we can try to articulate it a little bit more and get rid of that mile long flat look.
Don't underestimate it. I think this thing needs a drastic overhaul from what's shown here today.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know that a couple of finger shade tree pockets is going to get it done. If Glenn, would you mind, just for kicks, can we put up that original landscape plan? Just really quickly. It may be worth a minute or two to just take a gander at this.
Can you
I'm not looking at this too closely. I mean, I would even say if this were presented today, I might even argue that some of those box sizes are too small. I didn't see anything over 24, and frankly, a lot of 24-inch material can look like a twig. I might specify some of the calipers on those, or a certain dimension to a mature tree canopy. I think that, anyway, I could elaborate on this more, but I'm counting.
There's the legend.
Yeah, so there's 25, 32 trees proposed on this plan and Zippo on that new one. So you gotta get somewhere between 0 and 32 and
Closer to 32.
pretty far away from 0.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I'll present it to the owners and see what they say. I do appreciate your time.
Yep, okay,
All right, guys, thanks.
yep.
Glenn, could you pull up the previous elevations as well?
All right. We're not gonna let this die.
Move on.
Can you see that?
Yep. I look at that personally and I say, I don't know.
No, really.
You know, I think the sloped roof is fine. Maybe you could play with the volumes of it. Maybe you don't. I'm gonna stand by that original comment I made where the landscape, and I think John Walsh was echoing what I was saying. He words things a little bit more eloquently than I do. I think what he was trying to say was the same thing, where the landscape is the controlling chess piece in this building's design and the way it presents itself to the public. And I think if you got the landscape right, you couldn't make too many mistakes with some simple enhancements to the building. I think, John.
Yes, and this is an interesting juxtaposition of these two images. You know, for all of its sins, that sloped roof consistently tidies up the whole elevation. It just becomes a non-statement. It's very background. And, you know, the rest is some signage and pick the right color and call it a day. But yes, the screaming need is the parking lot. It's awful.
And you look at that building and like I don't even I don't know what I want to go into that shopping center to purchase, but it's not much of anything
Mhm.
drawing me in there. And I think a soft, like I wouldn't even go have lunch in there in my car because there's no shade, there's no relief from anything. There's just nothing drawing me there.
And this
Yeah.
previous one with the tower element.
No, I'm looking at the photo of the existing building
Right.
on the right there, Glenn. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. I guess I was over the elevation thing and just getting back to the landscape again, and thinking how the landscape could improve that parking lot and the experience of the building, and even a little bit of lighting in there at night maybe, and drawing me into that parking lot and wanting to know what business might be in there. Maybe I'll stop, and if I'm stuck at the red light, let me just whip it in here and see what they have. But I just
And
want to
Glenn, didn't they have a low wall also along Vistacino frontage as part of the landscape plan? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
Yes, there was. There was a
Like 36-inch high, 42-inch.
yeah, let me I know it's hard to see. But the you can see their lines here for the wall.
You're seeing your desktop.
Yeah.
See desktop.
Share your image.
Sorry. It's being so difficult today. So in this plan, you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
walls,
it had some movement back and forth,
like,
Right.
staggered.
offset walls. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and they did such a nice job across the street at Ascena, you know, with the patterns and rhythm, I think. They could look at that.
Mhm.
Is this comment time for board members?
I felt like we put this one to bed, but
Yeah, we already voted.
No, I mean, in general.
Yeah, I'm open. I have one more question though, since we're really beating this thing into the ground.
Jeez.
Yeah. Is it possible, Glenn, as I look at the colored landscape plan that was presented, is this one all, yeah, and maybe this is going too far, but I was about to ask about the adjustment of that sidewalk, and could that sidewalk meander and have alternating landscape strips on both right-of-way side and private side of that sidewalk, rather than having that continuous sidewalk along the curb line itself. But you know, I realize this is a path I don't want to go down. More money and costs, and gosh, we'll be lucky to get near what we're asking for. So it's just an idea. Sorry, came and went. Go, Tom.
I just, you know, I was thinking about some of the other plans that we reviewed, you know, the residential plans. And I'm wondering if it couldn't be a good recommendation to the applicants if they could just show, a lot of times the plan just stops at the property line. And if they could show maybe 10 feet or 15 feet either side of the property line, if there's existing walls, existing landscape, so it gives a better context. Today, the applicant explained, you know, there were trees next door and buffering and so forth. And I think if we saw some of the adjacencies on the plan, that it would help us get a better context for what they were proposing and why or why not, why they may or may not have plant material there, and when they're relying on a adjacent residence plant material.
I think it's a really good point, and I didn't realize you were making a general comment about like future presentations. But I know that's been one of the benefits of doing these reviews on Zoom is I've been able to go look on my computer and look at Street View and see how a neighbor has turf, and we're talking about adding gravel, and there's going to be a very defined line. And I did it today on that Stevens Road house where I could see, oh, yeah, that house was elevated to the west, and I could see all the existing foliage on the neighbor's east side. So I see what you're saying. That's if that could be a requirement, at least photo exhibits of this is the difference here. But certainly on, even if people thought about that on their site plans, that would kind of demonstrate that people are thinking about this. And I know Indian Wells is actually big on that item. They don't want those abrupt, crisp, straight lines where somebody's got turf and somebody else just comes in with boulders. They want you have to kind of make those two things kind of intermix together nicely.
Correct. Yeah, that would be the goal. Or just give it some context.
Yeah.
What we might do is just remind the planners, what I can do is remind the planners to make sure we're looking for that detail when we receive our plans. So I will do that.
Hey, David, I had a couple questions as well. There's a couple properties I've seen being work being done that I don't know if we've reviewed or not. One was the Hyundai dealership. I know they're obviously renovating that. There's a whole new facade there. Have we reviewed that?
Thought we read that. Let's see.
I don't know. Does anybody else remember reviewing it?
I remember reviewing car dealerships. Hyundai doesn't come to mind.
Yeah. I mean, I know
We
we
looked at
reviewed
BMW.
the BMW, the Porsche, the Mercedes dealership, but the Hyundai one, I mean, they're going full bore on that one. And
Yeah, this was reviewed by the committee on April 5th. So yeah, this one was presented back in
I
April.
must have missed it.
Yep.
Okay, I missed that one.
So
And
I
then
can
the other
show you
one,
the presentation if you're interested, but yeah. I mean,
Hope you like it, Steve.
I had no input, so I'll be a judge. And then the other one is the gas station at the 1100 Palm Canyon. They're doing something with, and I mean, they've reframed it and they're kind of rebuilding it, but I didn't see anything about that either, unless I missed it.
Oh, right. That old building.
South Palm Canyon or north?
Near Ocotillo and Sonora.
Yeah, it's like at the corner of Morongo, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Down by the old Sign Mart.
I don't know what the work is on that. So what I'll have to do is report back to you guys on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious to know what if it's going to be a gas station or what it's going to be. I have no idea what they're doing.
Okay.
Interesting.
I will report back to the committee on that.
Okay.
So that was new business. Any other new business?
This is right, committee member comments. So yeah, we're done with new business now.
Any other comments about that last project on Vistacino and Gene Autry? Or can we let it go?
I think we can let it go.
Yep. Well, then I think that concludes our meeting.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add tonight is one item that was part of your packet was the calendar for next year meeting. So it's the blue sheet that was at the back.
Yep.
So you're on the very left side of that sheet and it shows the scheduled meetings for 2022. So as you begin to plan your vacations, please keep this handy. And you'll notice some of the dates are not actually on Mondays because of conflict relative to a holiday or whether that's a state holiday or a religious holiday. So we've made some adjustments where there's an asterisk. So just so for clarification, that's what happened there.
What was the case today, that today's Tuesday meeting or this week's Tuesday meeting versus Monday?
Yeah, it's a Jewish holiday. Yesterday was a Jewish holiday.
Sorry. Okay, yeah,
So that's all I have.
okay.
All right.
So we will be adjourned at 7:41. Our next meeting will not be until next year on January 3rd.
Well, how about that? So happy
Happy New Year.
holidays,
Happy
everybody.
holidays, everyone.
Yep, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and
Happy
I guess
Kwanzaa.
no planning department Christmas party this year.
Unfortunately, we're not.
Mhm.
So thank you all for your work this past year. And we hope you have a happy new year next year and look forward to all your work next year. So thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. Have a nice holiday, everybody.
Thanks, you
Bye-bye
too.
now.
New Year.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah, okay.